Hello, everyone, and welcome along to this special webinar, special live webinar. And today we have not one guest, but five special guest property experts, I would say, influencers, mentors with a lot of experience in the property industry, just for you guys. So we will discuss, we'll do like a summary of 2024, discuss 2025. Before we start, if you watch it on our YouTube channel, feel free to subscribe to our channel. We also have two special promotions during this webinar time, and I will introduce it shortly. So let's start perhaps with introduction. So first, myself, Aviram, co-founder and CEO at Landlord. I will host this webinar. And let's start. I will start like the clock, based on the clock on how I can see your video pictures. So let's start with Ahmed.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you well, firstly, thank you for having me. Yeah, just a quick background. So I went to university, like I suppose like most people, studied economics, wanted a job in finance. I was there for about 3 years. That didn't quite pan out. So I started thinking about what else I could do, and I got into the world of rent to rent. So this was not buying, sorry, renting properties and then subletting onto Airbnb. I did that for a few years and then saved up enough money to buy my first property, which was a one bed flat, which I then turned into a two-bed flat, refinanced, used that money to buy the next one and the next one and the next one. After a few years, moved into turning houses into flats. So bought a house, turned into two flats, then bought a mixed commercial, turned into four flats, and I just finished one now, which is a house into five flats. So it's been an 8 year long journey. It's not like an overnight thing, but yeah, it's just gone one step at a time from doing small scale rent to rent. The first one was a studio, 135 Skyline. It was a tiny studio apartment to doing stuff, which is again, it's not massive. It's four flats, five flats. It's by no means a huge development, but it's one step at a time for me, and that's kind of where I am with things now.
All right, thanks, Ahmed. Gil, over to you.
Just unmute. Hi guys. Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me. So my journey's a little bit eclectic in that I started off as a fisherman in Norway, and I had an injury, retired me. I went into construction, built myself up as a construction manager, and then had thought I had the transferable skills in order to kind of make a go of it in property investment, and then obviously realised quickly that I needed to educate myself. And since then, I've been in several training programs. Last year was a really big year for me. Now, kind of helping Harvey out with his training program. And at the moment, apart from developing my own BRR projects, we are building out our deal sourcing investor list and sourcing deals nationwide.
All right, thanks, Gil. Steve, over to you.
Hi guys, hi everyone. Lovely to see you here. I suppose I can't see everyone here, but I can see you in the chat. So it's good, lovely to know you're here. My name is Steve Doran. I started out career-wise as a firefighter many years ago. Makes me feel quite old. I left there about 15 years ago after I finally managed to get myself into property and get going. Initially, not having a clue what I was doing because there weren't webinars like this back in the day, so you used to just fumble along and hit and hope, rent things to your mates and try and figure it out, but you sort of got away with it then. Since then, I refined a little bit what I was doing, started investing in HMOs back in 2009. Definitely makes me feel quite old. And primarily focus on HMOs, also do service accommodations, so short-term let properties, buy-to-lets, BRRs, all that good stuff. We've got a lettings agency and a deal sourcing company or business as well. It's funny because Ahmed just said just before, I think got a mutual acquaintance who was were they looking at deals or selling me deals?
Yeah, they're sort of in the apparently it's in the middle of something right now. So you have a lead, but they're trying to find a buyer for the lead.
Ah, okay. I think I might know who that is. So they're trying to middle a deal between the property.
Right.
Okay, cool. I won't say their name in the middle of the webinar there. But yes, that's pretty much me in a nutshell. I'm aware there's quite a few people to get through, so I shall hand it back.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Steve. Leah, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. Feel very happy to be here amongst all these professionals. So I'm Leah. I am one half of Property Couple. And Property Couple is mine and my husband's YouTube channel where we document the houses we've bought, refurbished, and rented out. So we mostly focus on HMOs, mini-mos. We've done a few small commercial bits as well. And I've not come from a property background at all. So I'm an actor, went to drama school, been in the creative industries. I also had another YouTube channel for 9 years, just being a clown, really. So there's nothing at all to do with property. Property's not my passion either. So for anyone in the comments that's just kind of maybe doing it to see what property could add to their life in terms of cash flow, I feel you. Property is not my passion, but I do love what it can add to my life. And my husband came from the corporate background, was very unhappy in his job, and that was the reason for us starting. Just to replace his income was our first goal.
All right. Okay. It's interesting, Leah. We need to discuss it. We spoke in the past about it, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
The passion is not there, but you still understand that if you want to do other things with passion, property is a great vehicle for that. So
For sure, yeah.
All right. And let's go to Harvey, that I know that you have a lot of things with passion, passion for everything, many things. So Harvey, over to you.
Oh, yeah, I feel, how can I top all these great intros? I can't anyway, by the way. But thanks everybody for showing up. Avram, thanks for inviting me on. I'm Harvey, remote property investor. I've been investing in property since 2009. Built up a decent sized portfolio for myself with a decent cash flow, help other people achieve that. And deal sourcing was the thing that really got me momentum. And I really feel no matter what you do, especially if you're starting selling some deals as you go along, because you've got to look at deals anyway, and you've got to learn how to find deals. So for me, it makes sense to sell a few as you get going, get that momentum, get that experience, and then you buy as your decisions. Once I grew a bit, I tried scouting my deal sourcing business. I realized it's very difficult as a scaled business. It's not as difficult as a sole trader business. But I had a big enough portfolio at that stage where it brought me choices, and we still do some sourcing now. It's exciting this year. We're setting up some AI automation, direct to vendor sort of stuff that should be running with AI bots and without us, and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I love helping people. My passion largely is more in the helping. I thought it was in property at the start. I like property, but seeing the journey you're taking person from here, and it's often usually more of a confidence shift than it is an educational shift in today's world, because we've got an abundance of information. And but yeah, that's my passions, and that's where I've been. And thank you for having me, everyone.
Thanks, Harvey. Thanks, everyone, for the great introduction. Before we start, perhaps let's do a quick poll with our attendees. If you are new to property, just getting started, please put 1 on the chat. If you are existing landlords with more than 1 property, buy-to-let property in your portfolio, or more than 1 project, please put 2. So we will know basically the audience. Okay, see 1, 1, 2, 2. Okay, it's a mix. Okay, this is great. All right. Before we start, I just want to mention the promotion of today. So we are hosting the webinar at Landlord. Landlord is a great platform for property investors to basically do everything you need throughout the life cycle of the property, starting from the sourcing phase. Then you can analyze the potential return using our deal analyzer. You can obtain market data, and then also understand the finance options, and you can also get the finance online. And after you purchase the property, you can manage your portfolio on your landlord account in terms of data, cash flow, performance tracking, and more. So today in this webinar, we run a promotion to our premium plan, which is £99 per year. But just for this webinar time, especially for you and for the experts that joined us, it's 50% off during this webinar time. Sarel, if you can put the details on the chat, but just go to your Landlord account, go to the settings page, click, I need to switch to this account, click upgrade, or just click on the link that Sarel will put on the chat. Then type experts webinar, click apply, and you will get the premium plan for 49.5 per pound for the first year, for the entire year. So it's a great benefit, and we have another special benefit toward the end of this webinar.
What about people who's got the already Avram? Someone in the chat saying already have Landlord account.
So just write your email to the host and panelists, and we can apply the coupon for your renewal. So yeah, good question. So just do it, like just write our Graham. Yeah, I know Graham. Just write your email to the host and panelists. Okay, so perhaps when we speak, if there is something relevant that technology can help, and we believe that digital tools and technology, you mentioned AI, Harvey, which we are also going to embed into Landlord, can definitely help property investor and landlords throughout their journey. But let's
exciting. Sorry to cut you, Avram, but exciting. I've been working with Avram in the background on the AI stuff that's coming with Landlord, so definitely keep your eyes out for that, because some of the stuff we've been looking at is really exciting.
Yeah, I think AI is a global trend, and there is a reason for that. And I think that the thing is how you get it into the relevancy of the product. So, we deal with properties, we deal with property sourcing, property analysis, deal analysis, managing portfolios. So basically, our goal in 2025 is to see how we can embed AI into the platform and help property investors do better and be more efficient. Okay, so let's focus on the webinar topic. So we want to summarize first 2024. I will ask you identical question, each one of you, and it's very interesting to hear your take about how you summarize 2024. Perhaps you can mention one use case or strategy that worked best for you, and then we will discuss 2025. But let's start with 2024. Perhaps I will do it the other way around now. So Harvey, perhaps you can go first. Basically, what we want to hear is basically about the property market. How did you see it in 2024, and perhaps things that worked for you or your special take on that?
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Yeah, so 2024, interesting year. Obviously, we see a lot of news and headlines around landlords exiting the market. Obviously, a lot of changes and compliance. But I just see that as opportunity, personally. And it's an opportunity in two ways, because first of all, it's getting less competitive to buy deals. So I've seen a much more buyers market. I've seen more all money out deals in the last 2 years than I've seen in my whole time in property since 2009. Like loads of all money out deals. And as I said, I sell deals, and I sell deals for people in my academy. So I'm seeing loads of people finding deals. Plus, we're seeing a bigger opportunity, because what's happening is it's shifting out a lot of armchair investors, because back in the day, like Steve said, you could kind of just wing it a little bit and just buy a place and kind of just forget about it. But today you really do need to know what you're doing. But that now leaves a massive opportunity for the people that are willing to skill up. If you're willing to skill up and learn what to do, it leaves you an opportunity in one, buying for yourself. But number two, it leaves you an opportunity also in these armchair investors I always get pushed back. I've sold lots and lots of deals from Rightmove, and people say, who would buy a deal from you if it's sitting on Rightmove? So they're not buying a deal, they're buying a service. They're buying the knowledge of the area, because I invest remotely. So it's often Southerners buying properties in the north and places like this. They're buying the links of letting agents and builders and all your sort of network within the area that you've built up. And more people are buying the fact that you can guide them a little bit, like put them in front of the right accountants, tell them the right strategy of buying in a limited company on a sole name. So I've seen, it didn't slow down, but myself, people I mentored sold like hundreds and hundreds of deals last year. So there's a massive appetite for this for the right people, but it's scaring off the headline people, which is probably a good thing in itself, because when something comes competitive, if somebody don't know what they're doing, that competition of somebody that's an amateur makes it very difficult for you to compete against them, because they just put their rents down and they don't know their full margins. They bid on properties they don't know how to do the numbers on. So it really makes it hard to compete against somebody that's not educated. So I found it pretty decent. It is a bit of a pain adhering to a lot of the new laws, but I think if you understand them correctly, then yeah, it's just a great environment. So yeah, that's how I see last year. I see last year is there was more opportunity is a buyer's market, more on a seller's market, and the worry about interest rates going up. Rents rose much higher than interest rates. Like my interest rates across my portfolios, yeah, my rents probably rose 20 to 30% higher than my interest rates rose.
So just like to make sure like you increased rent during 2020?
Yeah, rental increases. Well, I did make a mistake with mine. I was one of them old sort of landlords not paying attention to my portfolio, and I didn't do the increases gradually. And my increases should have been a lot more. So one thing I would advise everybody is if you've got a portfolio, increase it yearly. It doesn't do the tenants much of a favor either, because all of a sudden now they've got a really wide void between what they're paying. And if you do it yearly, they get used to them payments and they don't take on other credits as much. So and the problem for them is if they can't afford it and move out, they can't afford anything. Like they have to either really downsize or do something different. But yeah, the rent increases are more than covering the mortgage increases. But I didn't even increase mine as much as I could do because I left it too wide of a window to do that.
By the way, with landlord, you can put rent review reminders. So once you set up property and then you set up a tenant and a tenancy, then on each tenancy, you can define a reminder. We call it a rent review reminder. You can define the interval. It can be 3 months or 1 month before the end of the tenancy. And then you can also do like assessment for the rental income online, which is part of our premium plan. And then you can be in touch with your tenant on time and make sure that you adjust the rent based on the market. So
somebody said, what about the 7% stamp duty? That's for like on a second property. Depends what market you're in. So again, I'm a remote property investor. There's no stamp duty. It's only a 5% up until £120,000. So it's a little bit kinder in these circumstances for me, buying in areas where the values of properties are a little bit lower. Another thing that I found last year is, and I've done this for probably about 10 years anyway, social housing deals. It bypasses all of these problems. Like with Section 21 going, you don't have to worry because you've got a lease on the property for like 3-5 years. Worrying about tenants and the tenants' rights, you don't have to worry because you've not got tenants, you've got a commercial lease. Yeah, it bypasses a lot of the hassles, but not a lot of lenders like it. So it does. Is there anyone on your panels that do the social housing lending, Avram?
In this panel, like in this webinar?
No, like in the panel of lenders that you've got on the platform. I think something to look into.
Yeah, on the mortgage side, I believe we have options on. Yeah.
But yeah, great strategy. Completely bypasses all of the new regulations that are coming in.
All right. Okay, Leah, over to you. Thanks, Harvey.
I'll try and keep it quick because I'm aware there's so many of us to say a bit. So yeah, 2024, we started looking at a few different strategies. So buying land and trying to sort of build our own, do a planning gain basically. So it's kind of been a year of, slower strategies, things that don't move as quickly as like an auction purchase or us buying something and getting social housing contracts attached to it. So it's been an interesting year, but I have also helped a really lovely couple that do like one-to-one mentoring with me, sort of guiding them through their first HMO purchase, which was interesting because all of our HMOs we've purchased and then renovated back to brick pretty much and then rented out, whereas I coached a couple through buying an existing tenanted HMO and then trying to add value through basically raising the below market rent on the transactions like after buying it. So that's been an interesting one. I think there is a lot of opportunity, like what Harvey was saying, with lots of retiring landlords exiting the market. Also, I think I saw so many emails last year about like separation and just people just getting rid of parts of their portfolio, whether it's due to like their personal situation. So it's just been about connecting with sort of trusted sourcing agents, and I have made some really good connections this year for ourselves and then also for mentoring clients. So yeah, I think there's so much opportunity. I don't really like read property news or like just sort of stay in my own lane and just get on with it really. So I do think there's an abundance of opportunity.
All right. Thanks, Leah. By the way, quick question about tenanted properties. It's like you believe in this strategy, because usually I know that people will look to buy a property in a vacant position, and it's interesting for landlords to get the property with a tenant inside.
Yeah.
Like quickly, what is your take on that? Like, what would be your choice? It depends, I believe.
Yeah, I think it depends. So like if you're buying something that's already tenanted, obviously you want to do your due diligence on the tenants that are inside there. Are they behind on rent? Are you going to have to try and evict them and go through an expensive court procedure to get them out? I've literally got experience getting rid of squatters and stuff like that. So that's all just headache. You want to try and make sure you're buying something with good tenants inside. And if they are paying like a lot less than what maybe market rent is, there is that opportunity to buy it and, increase the rent and add value in that way without sort of like going in, refurbishing rooms and then getting new people in. There is definitely room to add value that way. Same with commercial tenants as well. So yeah, I think that you shouldn't be scared to buy things where the tenants are already in situ.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Leah. Steve, how you summarize 2024?
Was an interesting year. There's quite a bit that happened. I think the budget was quite a big thing for property investors. I think we've got a combination of taxation, legislation, regulation to contend with, which is why it's always important to attend things like this training, to have mentors, coaches, people that can guide and steer you through. But that's normal. The terrain will always change. I think Harvey touched on landlords leaving the market, but that is an opportunity. And a lot of them are leaving for a number of reasons. One, some of them are sick and tired of the new regs and they don't want to keep on top of them. I think the other one is the taxation. A lot of people getting stung with property in their personal name. There's still 94% of landlords with properties in their personal name. But that's an opportunity for us to come in and to buy well. And I think that's the way now. Like I said, years ago, you could just get away with it. Years ago, you could do a flip, and in the 6 months that someone might be renovating and putting it back on the market, it's gone up in value so much anyway, you'd still make a profit, even if you didn't do a refurb or you lost money on the refurb. But those days, in my opinion, are gone, and you do need the clarity on your strategy, and strategy is the big word. So I think realistically, to keep ahead over the last year, you had to try and buy sensibly. There were a lot of motivated sellers on the market, people that wanted to be out quick and wanted to be done. And so there were a lot of good opportunities in that sense, add values to things, which is always a great strategy, adding value to property. And then looking for higher cash flowing strategies. I might ruffle a few feathers, but buy to let for me is not the number one strategy in my, I'm being really careful in my wording, for me personally at this point. And this is speaking as somebody who's got buy to let property, by the way. So I'm not saying that I don't do it. I'm just saying where my focus is now, primarily on higher cash flow, because there is a little bit more pinch. The mortgages, I don't want to say the mortgages are high. That's a matter of perspective. I think if you look back historically over time, the mortgages are actually fine. It's just that we all got so comfortable at the rates that they were at when they sort of dropped back in 2008 and stayed there for quite a substantial amount of time. So we've just got to be a little bit more thought out with our process, with our strategy. But overall, it was positive. If you bought well, if you held, and markets always fluctuate. We'd love to believe that property is just going to go like this, but the reality is it goes like this. And this year, I think we've seen a bit more stabilization last year, 2024 is last year now. A bit more stabilization, about 3% growth, depending on where you read, which is reasonable. But then when you match in inflation, it's not groundbreaking. However, if you're cash flowing well and you're holding the asset and you leverage well, It is. So it wasn't it was a year that probably favored people that knew how to structure themselves correctly tax wise, people who knew how to maximize the value add to a property and knew how to maximize the cash flow from a property, in my humble opinion.
So Steve, like there's also a question for that. Like if it's not buy to let, which strategy would just if you can emphasize again, which strategy would go with?
Depends on your resources. So one thing I'd say as well, because if you go in and you haven't got loads of money and you haven't got investors just yet, then there are strategies, deal packaging, your rent to rents, all of those things are valid, good cash flow strategies. Even what we do, we've got a lettings business. You know, it doesn't take a massive amount of cash to get in. Just stay away from my areas, please. But these are all good. But in terms of high cash flow, and really I'm looking at commercial, houses, multiple occupation, service accommodation. But you got, again, service accommodation, you've got to know what you're doing now. I think just after COVID or around COVID time, you could kind of get away with just getting something, sticking it on Airbnb. But now you've got to really do your due diligence. You've got to buy well. You've got to get the right area. You've got to know how to stay on top of the platforms and optimize. But for me personally, I do a bit of all of those, but anything multiple occupancy. So houses are multiple occupancy and also commercial. So I viewed a commercial a couple of days with the idea being to split separate floors out and lease them separately. I think anything multiple occupancy can generate a higher cash flow and ultimately multiples on the actual bottom line profit.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Steve. Gil, you are on mute.
There we go. Right. Yeah, so as Steve mentioned, I think even just last year alone for me, I must have pivoted 3 times just for like the market trends. So I think there's a time and place for all strategies, but even throughout the year, my opinion has changed just because of the journey that I've been on. So whereas it might have stayed with service accommodation, I was aiming more towards that for the cash flow originally. When the government announced that they were going to, possibly change the new laws, obviously the government changed, so there wasn't much talk about it after that. That put a lot of people off from the deal sourcing perspective. And then also, however, sorry, I should say, there was, it feels like the market has become slightly saturated, especially where I am, which is mainly in South Wales. So again, going back to what Harvey mentioned, the social housing route at the moment appeals to me more than anything because the lion's share of my time is taken up with deal sourcing. And, we've all got 2 jobs, haven't we? We've got content creation and property investing. It's not just one. So at the moment, I'm more interested in having the most hands-off strategy that I can have in order to kind of build up my other businesses. And that was completely the opposite, 1 year ago. 1 year ago, I kind of still had the illusion I was Superman. I could do it all. And then, almost became burnt out in May. And then, yeah, so I feel like that continual pivoting process, growing with the market is inevitable, throughout the years. It's never going to stop. In 20 years' time, I don't think we'll be talking about half of these strategies anymore. And that's the same with all industries, I guess. Like all industries, no matter what, you're gonna have to continually adapt and do what suits you in your journey, based mainly on time, I think, more so than money in some instances.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Gil. Ahmed?
Yeah, I think this is a bit of a rabbit hole question. I mean, you can go quite deep in terms of data and everything else. I'll try to structure one in terms of the market and second in terms of, some of the projects I've done or the people I've worked with have done. I think in terms of the market, you can look at it as a micro and a macro. So micro meaning, well, what are the things which have changed this year? What is the outlook? What is the forecast? Have prices gone up? Have prices gone down? I personally don't pay a huge amount of attention to this purely because I started investing in 2016. Now, if you think about the market since 2016, first it was Brexit, then Trump became president for the first time, then COVID happened, then Ukraine happened. Since 2016, I don't think anyone has ever said this is now a good time to invest in property. Let's be real, like fine, prices have gone up, but at the same time, no one has been raving, well, now is the perfect time to get in. It's always been a bit uncertain, but at the same time, prices have continued to go up, rents have continued to go up. Now, it could have also gone the other way, potentially, but that brings me on to my other point, which is looking at the market as a macro. And what I mean by that is, if you just zoom out slightly and forget about the regulation which is coming and how stamp duty is changing and these sort of things are anything which is changing in the market. If you think about it from the perspective of the UK economy, we have a population which is growing because of immigration. We have an aging population, so less people, people are living longer. They're holding on to their big properties, which then obviously get passed on through inheritance and everything else. But for example, the road I live on in Stevenage in Hertfordshire, most 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom houses have one person living in them, right? That previously would not have happened. Okay, there's so aging population, much higher immigration, and at the same time, the government does not build enough housing. So if you have a lot more demand and a lot less supply over the years, well, prices and rents are only going to go one way. Now, it's very hard to forecast. Is that going to happen tomorrow? Is that going to happen in 2024, 26, 28? But that is the macro. And if you look at John Lewis and if you look at BlackRock and you look at Lloyds Bank, the reason they're getting into property investing is not because it's good for the next 12 months. It's because it's good for the next 10 years, for the next 20 years, for the next 30 years. And so you shouldn't really evaluate property investing on the basis of what the rates are currently, because the forecast is that the rates will come down and the rents will go up. And I think most people accept that for future generations, the Gen Zs and so on and so forth, it is going to be the generational rent, right? Generation rent. Most people, I think, have accepted that they will probably end up renting as opposed to buying. And that's the agenda which a lot of companies are pushing. Not necessarily, for example, if you just think about going in the underground or, in London, if you think now compared to 10 years ago, how many adverts you see of build-to-rent companies, right? So these companies have bought entire buildings and they're saying, we'll give you the first month's rent off and we'll chuck in the furniture and everything else. These are professional businesses set up whereby they have developments and they are pushing people to rent their properties. That, as far as I'm aware, did not used to happen 5 years ago, 10 years ago. You would just go and write, move and rent. But now these are full-on rental businesses, and because I think it's only going to go one way. So I try to not to think too much about what's going to happen in the next 12 months, because it doesn't matter which degree you have. It is virtually impossible to work out what's going to happen in the next 12 months. In terms of projects, so the one I did myself was a house which we turned into 5 flats. So we had 3 1-bedroom flats and 2 2-bedroom flats. That finished as of a few weeks ago. So that's just in the refinance right now, hopefully not too much longer, and that sort of goes on. In terms of the people I coached and mentored, so this is, I think, by far one of the best beginner strategies, which I think is applicable to, the 180 odd people that are watching today. So I started by turning 1-beds into 2-beds, and then I would refinance. But a lot of people have always said to me, well, you did yours in 2019, 2020. Well, does it still work in 2024, 2025? So these are 2 examples of case studies from last year based on land registry and RICS valuations and mortgage valuations, not what I believe the property is worth or what the person I worked with believes the property is worth. This is your mortgage offer. So one person bought a 1-bed in Guildford for £135,000, refinanced 6 months later for £325,000. So it went up by £190,000 in the space of 6 months. I don't know what an easier strategy than that is. The second one, again, in Kennington Oval in London, bought a 1-bed for £318,000. 6 months later, refinanced at £500,000. So that went up by £182,000 in the space of 6 months. We can get a bit, we can get into the Q&A later and sort of do a bit of a deep dive into that. But it just shows that even, in 2024, these numbers are still possible and these properties are still out there. Both of these were on Rightmove, by the way. They were not through some special sourcing method. So that's sort of my take on the projects, and in terms of where the market is and what I believe is a way forward.
Thanks, Ahmed. Also, I need one volunteer just because the social housing thing you mentioned it several times. If someone can explain, like in 2-3 sentences, basically the strategy and what is the opportunity with social housing. If
I wish
someone else, I don't tend to do much of that. So
yeah, I mean, social housing is a really broad term. and people often get confused, I think, from what I've seen the last year, between being a social housing provider and in using your property or somebody else's property on a rent-to-rent basis in order to give to a social housing provider. And if you wanted to be a social housing provider, it's extremely complicated. And then that branches out into loads of different strategies like emergency housing and temporary accommodation, even children's homes are classed as social housing. So dialing it back to the strategies that we refer to, there's rent to social housing, which can obviously be through a company which then says it's government backed, because the government then give the social housing provider money, and then we would provide the either a block or a house for that social housing association. Or you could do it yourself, which would be a lot more difficult. However, that would just be pretty similar to having a rent to service accommodation in a sense. Like some people have contracts which can apply for both. Or the way we, Harvey and I are mentioning or kind of aiming towards, is to have a contract in place with a social housing provider before you purchase a property in order to get a fixed return for something like 5 to 10 years. So that would be hands off. They'd cover the maintenance of voids under a FRI lease, fully repaired and insured. Yes, there would, there's pros and cons of everything, and your property is probably going to get trashed, let's say. However, they would be obligated to repair it, and they would also cover all the bills. So it's, as I mentioned, like a hands-off strategy where you might not make as much cash flow as you normally would do with other strategies, but it suits someone, say, on my journey, in my situation.
And can you assume basically it will increase the occupancy rate, less vacancy, and so there are things that can compensate the.
Yeah, I mean, so you're not going to have the void periods. You're not going to have presumably the maintenance bills during that period. If you had a 10-year lease, you could expect to maybe pay, let's say, 5% maybe over that, maintenance. So yeah, there's pros and cons, but it's like an easy life strategy is how I like to call it.
And you mentioned it can also affect the property appreciation over the years, or
Yeah, good question, Harvey.
No, asset prices are asset prices. So obviously, no, I can't see it affecting the asset price. Yeah, the thing with social housing as well is the hard thing with it is the lenders. Some of the social housing providers are not great. Most of the social housing providers are largely staffed, and they've got lots of pressure on them because they've got loads of. You got to imagine a lot of these deal with refugees or ex-convicts, vulnerable people. So getting staff that are trained and capable of managing that. Steve said he's got a lettings business. I sold a lettings business last year, and it was probably the best day of my life, because being a lettings manager, depending on profile tenants, the profile tenants we had was just felt like you was being like a social worker for them, and it's just hard work. It's hard to hire staff in a lettings business, in my experience, because the wages are not great, and ultimately the job is not super rewarding. And a letting agent usually sits in this triangle of, the landlord wants things done for the cheapest. The people that do it the cheapest don't turn up very quick. The tenant wants it done yesterday. The people that would do it yesterday are too expensive for the landlord, and they're sandwiched between this kind of triangle. So yeah, I found it a tough be a business, but it's a good business because it gives you recurring revenue. It's a very sellable business. I lost money in that business for years and never made a penny from it, really. And I sold it for an amount of money that I was shocked that I could even sell it for. So as like anything, it's got pros and cons, but kind of went on off the beaten track of what we was talking about there. Social housing, like anything, it's got pros and cons. The thing for me is, I think it depends where you are on your journey and what sort of time, what energy you've got to put towards this. It is, once you've got a decent provider in there, the most passive form of property investing I've ever done. But you do have to keep an eye on them. There is a lot of wear and tear. They do promise to give the property back in the condition. Some of them do, depends on the contract. They do promise to give it back, but the premises behind it, Avram, is basically these charities will rent this property from you on a commercial lease. So you're not a tenant anymore, you're not a landlord anymore. You're just renting it out like a commercial building, and then they're dealing with the tenants in between. But I've had all sorts with my properties. I've had to take one back off of a provider. I've had one burnt down because there was a drug addict in one. I don't know. You don't know. You're not allowed to know who the tenants are. So lenders don't like this as well. So lending is higher on these. So like with anything, you've got to look into it, but it is very, very passive if you get a decent provider. And yeah, it works well. I've just bought two single let properties in the northeast. And going back on what Steve said, it's all dependent on you, your strategy, how experienced you are, what capital you've got, what time you've got to put to it. So like I talk about this all the time. This is what I call my all-weather portfolio. This is my portfolio. It's heavily lent towards buy-to-lets. I've got HMOs, SA, a little sliver of SA. But for me at the moment, when I work with people, I say, how much capital you've got? What's your knowledge like? What's your network like? What's your time like? And how much courage, confidence, conviction have you got? And I call this my property delta matrix. So a delta is a triangle in ancient Latin, if anybody's wondering. And at the bottom, you've got your buy-to-lets. At the top, you've got developments. The further you go up, if you score yourself from 0 to 10, you need to be closer to all these, especially on courage, confidence, conviction, because it becomes much more overwhelming, much more complex the further you go up. You need better solicitors. You need better accountants. You need better network of builders. The builder that does your buy-to-let is not necessarily going to do your commercial conversion or your development. So you've got to make it relevant to where you are. So the last 3 properties I bought were single lets. Although I have done pretty much most of these strategies, I was short on time. I was short on headspace because I was working on a different project at the time. And I was short on network of builders doing larger projects. So where I didn't have the time and headspace to go and kiss a few frogs with the larger builders to do these bigger projects, I had capital in the bank. So I just settled on some tenanted, sitting in situ. 2 had social housing contracts in, 1 had a normal tenant in, and it just suited me for where I was at the time. Would I do a bigger project again in the future? Yep. If my headspace frees up, my time frees up, or if a magical builder knocks on my door tomorrow and says I'm a great builder that's not going to mess you around and turn up on time and charge you a reasonable rate, and then I might look at it again. But yes, it's pretty relevant, I think, to who you are and where you are in your journey.
All right. Thanks, Harvey. Good pitch. So before we continue to speak about 2025, you mentioned several strategies, and also there was a question to Ahmed. By the way, don't worry about question. We'll have time for question and answers. That Ahmed, like one asked, how basically you did your 2 deals that you mentioned, you described. Before you answer, I just wanted to show that on Landlord with a deal analyzer, you can actually start analyzing different strategies, the buy-to-let, flip, and BRR. And buy-to-let, you can also analyze currently HMO deals and social housing, but we will do some special tweaks for that. And with the deal analyzer, you can get the short-term metrics for the first year, and then to see also future scenarios to see what will be your metrics over time. And you can see the best case scenario, the worst case scenario. And you can also adjust the data. You can get some details about the postcode. Sorry, I had an issue here. And you can also estimate the property value before the refurbishment, after the refurbishment, and the rental income, and everything is available unlimited on our premium plan, which you have the benefit during this webinar time to get it with 50% off, just 49.5 instead of 19.99. Sorry, if you can put again the links on the chat. Either click on the link or go to the settings page, click upgrade, then click add coupon and type experts webinar, click apply, and you can get the premium plan. Contains many features, documents management, rental and value estimation for properties, sourcing alerts, and linking bank accounts to automate your cash flow, and much more, with 49.5 pounds for the first year during this webinar time. And now I will show you the second promotion. Someone asked how the people here can contact the experts. So Leah, you mentioned that, of course, in the social media available and people can reach out. We do have an experts panel. I think not all of you are on our experts panel. Hopefully you will be there. We have Steve and Ahmed here that you can visit the pages. We will put the pages on the chat, and they offer 25% discount on their meetings if you book a call with them through Landlord during this webinar time. It's basically a mentorship session with the experts, and Harvey, Gil, and Leah, you can like on the chat, you can write what is the best way to reach out to you. And yes, so now let's speak about 2025 before we go to the question and answer session. So basically, I want to ask two things. One, how do you see the property market in 2025? We have a new government, new budget, and what will be your best strategy in 2025 and your plans? And also, if you can share one tip, only one, for property investors/landlords in 2025. Steve, let's start with you.
Sure thing. 2025, I'd say get the education, get the support. There's such great opportunity in property. It's a fantastic place to be. One thing I thought was interesting listening to every different person on the panel speak is that there's so many different approaches that are all effective. And I think that's probably the most beautiful thing, going back to what Harvey says, depending on your resources and what suits your goals. But find someone that fits that and get them to take you along with it. I love the saying that if you think education is expensive, then try ignorance. And we're in a moving sort of target with regulation, stuff like that. But as long as you keep on top of it, as long as you evolve and move with those things, then you really can do some incredible things, like jumping onto social housing, if that's the strategy that's going to work for you now, or just keeping on top of what's happening, what's going on in the market. So I think it's a great opportunity. All goes back to the famous saying, don't wait to buy houses and the wait. So people are always trying to time the market, or is there going to be a crash this year so I can buy in? And that sort of mentality never ever works. You get in, you stay in, and then over time, Ahmed said about the change in population, we've got a population that's going up consistently, and there's not enough houses, and there's no way on earth this government or any other government in the past has got anywhere close to meeting that demand for housing. So that's only going to do one thing to prices. So whatever you need to do to get into property, do it, but get the right education, get the right support, so you're doing it well and you're getting the maximum out of that.
All right, thanks, Steve. Leah?
Yeah, that was great advice, Steve. I think that was like, I echo what Steve said. And also I just want to say that, like, when we bought our first deal in the first lockdown of COVID, everyone thought we were crazy. Like, what are you doing? And we have no regrets. Like, and if you ask anyone who's ever bought property who's still doing it actively, they've never said like, oh, I wish I didn't buy that house. Like, literally no one. So yeah, I just try to ignore any like scary news or like crash coming. Like, I just stay in your lane, like buy for demand, don't buy anything that's not going to rent, and call people up. You know how much you learn sometimes when you just have like half an hour on the phone with your broker or someone who's in your team, who's like, you just absorb so much from them, and you start learning more. I remember at the start of our journey, we didn't really have many contacts, so I paid this builder to just come on viewings with me. I was like, I've booked 5 viewings. I'm just going to chuck you 100 quid. Can you just come with me? Drive around with me on these viewings. Just give me your thoughts. Because like sometimes the builders are going to point out something that you would have paid a lot of money to find out is maybe a problem on a survey. And they can just look at it in 5 seconds, but I've seen this a million times. You're going to need damp proofing here. You're going to need this, going to need that. And you just, if you feel like you're out of your depth and you don't really know things, like, just start surrounding yourself with people that are doing it, and you're going to learn so much from them. Just sort of like, got to stay close to the fire, if that makes sense. I think that's what I would do at the beginning if I was starting now.
Great tip. And sometimes you can save future costs, and you can prevent things that might happen if you get the right advice or get the right people around you. Or use
Also, I'm not saying, I'm also not, I just realized I'm not saying don't get surveys. Like, you can pay, get yourself a survey. I'm not, but sometimes like surveys will say everything to protect themselves, so sometimes it's just worth chatting to your builder.
Yeah, course. All right. Okay. Thanks, Leah. Ahmed?
Yeah, I want to just add on to what Leah said because I think it's a very good point. And I think that's a strategy which I haven't heard before in terms of paying a builder to go around with you. But it does make a lot of sense. And I always say to people, of course, property education is important, but at the same time, because just by going on a property course, it can't make you successful. It's incredibly hard. If you think about any field where someone packages up 3 days worth of information, now, not to say that information is not useful, of course, it sets a foundation, but just because information is packaged up over 3 days, you can't consume all of that in one go, process all of it, and then suddenly start applying. It would be the same as someone watching a bunch of videos about driving cars, and then the second you sit in a car, it's not the same thing as watching videos about a car. And so you have to, if you go onto a property course, you have to treat it as a foundation, as opposed to, by the time I walk out of this course, I will know everything and I will be just as good as a person teaching, because that is incredibly hard. Whereas do that as a foundation, but then the strategy Leah's mentioned, which I think is amazing, is not something I've done, but I can see a lot of merit in it, which is by actually going out there, by actually tasting it, by actually doing it for real, and actually seeing properties and making offers and doing viewings. And the thing with property investing is there's a lot of things you can do for relatively low cost and almost free. For example, if you speaking to brokers doesn't cost you money. Doing what Leah does doesn't really cost you much money. Making offers doesn't cost you much money. So there's a huge amount of stuff you can do before you have spent any real money in order to validate if something is going to work or if it's not going to work. Like I said, by no means I'm saying people shouldn't educate themselves, but it's education followed by action. I'm not going to go into this because it's going to take a long time, but for anyone who's sort of in that area where they're about to think about education or they're in the middle of education, you should Google the Dunning-Kruger effect, which I think is incredibly applicable to something like this. In summary, what it basically says is that the more information you have, the more complexity you also introduce. So your confidence actually goes down as you become more knowledgeable. Because, when you get into property, you think, well, okay, I'll just buy a 1-bed, I'll turn it into a 2-bed and I'm done. But in reality, once you start learning, you realize, well, actually there's finance and there's legal stuff and there's freeholder consent and there's stress testing and comparables. And so most of the people that I speak with, they end up saying, well, what do I do? Do I invest in HMO, service accommodation, north, south? And there's a million other questions. And so you should look into the Dunning-Kruger effect and really set yourself up well to learn. I think the art of learning is something which is a bit forgotten and is probably more important than most things. Just adding on to what Leah said, really, because I think that's amazing.
And Ahmed, in terms of like the impact of the new government budget on the property market, like, do you have any take for that, like on 2025?
Yeah.
Would you change a strategy or?
Well, my thesis on this is that, like I said before, in the macro, I think property prices and rentals will continue to go up. That's one thing. And the other theory I had was that, the UK is apparently the 4th biggest exporter in the world, and which is hard to believe because the UK doesn't really make much. But the reason it's the 4th biggest exporter is because of financial services. And I think debt has a large role to play in that to some degree. Canary Wharf essentially runs London to a large degree. And because mortgage debt in this country is so important, my personal view is that the banks will always find a way to lend more and more and more money because, well, it is a big business. I don't think we will get to a situation whereby they will stop lending because things are unaffordable. So, for example, I've got a remortgage going through right now. Now, pre all of this, you could get a limited company buy-to-let mortgage around 3.4%, right? The rates are considerably higher than where they were before, but I've been offered 4.09% on a buy-to-let limited company, ex-council, deck access, throw everything at it, is 4.09. The reason it's 4.09 is because what they've done in a very cheeky way is they've increased the arrangement fees. So the product values are much, much higher, which are bolted on. So it's not like you pay them up front. They've reduced the rates. And so stress testing now, again, passes just like it did pre all of this stuff. And once again, affordability has gone up because, well, now you're no longer constrained by the amount of interest. So my view is, you have to be careful with these things. You have to know what you're doing in terms of leverage and arrangement fees. And, just because the rate is low doesn't mean you accept it. But at the same time, my macro view is prices will always go up and they will always find a way to lend more and more money. It's just a case of using that the right way. So cash flow is not that much of an issue because if, at a rate of 4.09%, given rents have gone up so much more, most people's cash flow should in theory be higher than what it was previously. Because most people were on about 3.4, 3.5% anyway on a limited company buy-to-let mortgage. I mean, I definitely was. And so if people are saying their rents have significantly shot up and the rates have gone from 3.5 to 4.09, your cash flow should be significantly stronger. So I think there's always going to be a solution as long as you know what you're doing. And just in terms of what Steve said, I completely agree with you. It's a case of being in rooms like this and speaking to other people and just being aware of the different things that are happening. And so Steve might say something, and I might be like, well, that's a great idea. That's something I didn't think about before. And say with everyone else on this panel. So I think it's about being in the know. And I think if you're in the know, that is where you will have the opportunity.
Yeah, great tip. Yeah, thanks, Ahmed. You mentioned the mortgages and the products, and just I want to mention on Landlord, on the finance tab, mortgage, remortgage, you can find live products from buy-to-let lenders, and you can basically run different searches for limited companies. You can try different rental incomes. Landlord will stress test the case, stress test the portfolio, so we'll get more accurate results. You can also start to get the mortgage online and get your mortgage illustration with Landlord. And again, I mentioned the 50% of our premium plan, hurry up to upgrade. Ahmed, you mentioned something you mentioned the difference between the rate and the fees. So if you go with a fixed product for 2 years or 5 years, then you need to take a look also on the fees. So lenders reduce rates for as you mentioned, so the stress test to pass, and then also to allow you to lend more money. But then the fees went up basically to compensate and to get their margin in place. So on Lendo, you can see the fees, you can see the rate, you can order either by fees or by a rate or by total cost. Total cost, we calculate the entire cost for the period based on the fixed period. And then you can see that perhaps it's better depends on your needs, but there are products that you can pay less fees and a higher interest rate, and basically there is a balance between them. And with Landlord, you can see what products are available, and you can also see which lender will not lend you based on their criteria and what is the reason. So yeah. So now let's continue with 2025. I think
Yeah,
go ahead.
Ram, if you can just share your screen again.
Yeah.
So I think I don't know who said this. Someone said this earlier on the panel. But just to reiterate there as well, I think at times people get a bit emotional about these sort of things. I think it was Harvey who said, well, interest rates are relative. They were much higher back in the day. Yes, they're high now, but they were even higher back in the day. And I think this is one of those things where, because arrangement fees were much lower, because now they have gone up, I think sometimes people get a bit emotional and they say, well, I was paying 1% before, so why would I pay 4%? But looking at the total cost is probably the best way of doing it, because even though the arrangement fee is higher, you might compare it to a product where the fee is lower, but the rate is higher. In the end, it's exactly the same thing. So the case is, do you want to forfeit your cash flow, or do you want to forfeit, the product fee at the end? The amount of money is going to be exactly the same. And I think if someone's
by the way, the fees can be added to the loan. So basically, theoretically,
exactly.
You don't pay the fees, but you pay more
It's like an artificial way of increasing your leverage, because you can increase your cash flow and increase your leverage by just bolting on the fee at the end. As long as the property appreciates enough that when you go for the refinance, you have enough, to be able to pull your money out. But I wouldn't get emotional about it. To me, it's just a number, and I think that's a great tool to be able to actually see that breakdown.
Yeah, no, definitely. All right, thanks, Ahmed. And Gil, 2025.
2025. Yeah, I guess as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to be doing everything we mentioned already, and then I hope to have more partnerships. I've always been wary, personally, of JVing with people and kind of keep my cards close to my chest. So finding the right partners, I think, is really important, especially when you want to scale, and I'm at that stage. The market doesn't worry me at all. I just think you just adapt, right? Just adapt and and really keep it as simple as possible. And I guess any advice, my advice, because I'm kind of the new kid on the block here, like it's still a very fresh memory to what it was like when I started, and especially being in like groups and networking events where uh, it seems across the board that everybody gets a shiny penny syndrome. And I've talked about this a lot with Harvey, and there's just so many interesting strategies. And even on this call, we're all saying such amazing things, and then Instagram and it can be quite overwhelming where you want to do it all. And then you get this procrastination sets in because you're searching for this perfect deal. And a lot of people that I speak to all the time are looking for this perfect deal. And I think it's really important to remember that the first deal is not your last. It's the first. Yeah, there's going to be another 20 whatever years of just getting deals. It just has to be good enough. And because people get stuck in this procrastination phase, and yeah, just touching on that for the new guys, because like you shouldn't be hesitant because of the Renters' Right bill coming out. Just find something which works for you within your budget and the amount of time that you can give, and keep it simple. But don't be put off and constantly distracted by the million different scenarios on Instagram, just being bombarded, especially in networking events. So yeah, just kind of stick and I've done the same thing, like I said last year, I literally thought to myself at one point, I want to do every single strategy all at once, which is insane, just stay in your lane, like I think Leah said, and pick the one you want to do, keep your blinkers on, just do that. When you've done that and you start building your confidence, then start kind of adding to your skill set. Because a lot of people even I spoke to a guy the other day that wanted to do a big 10-bed sui genesis conversion from his first go. And I was like, do you realize the amount of, moving parts to a deal like that? Keep it simple, just get started.
Great tip. Thanks, Keith. And Harvey? You're on mute. Harvey? You're on mute, Harvey.
Yeah, that helps. So yeah, reflecting what's ahead of us 2025, I think the government are going to have a bit of a drag on the property market. I think just like sentiment leads more than actual stats, if that makes sense. So the market is sentiment driven, and all the mainstream media is pushing towards Labour, Keir Starmer, the World Economic, the World. I can't even spit it out, but people probably know what I mean. Put it in the comments if you do. But yeah, everybody's talking about this doom and gloom, and when that's talked about, people lead their decisions on sentiment. And Ahmed said this earlier on. A lot of people end up getting emotional about their decisions as well. I'm not that worried. I think Labour is going to keep the market a bit dragged. I do feel they're going to make it a little bit more complex. But again, I feel that's just a massive opportunity for the people that are willing to skill up and learn what to do. And echoing on what everybody said, environments dictate results. I would be very careful about the thing with when I started in a recession, and 2008 recession, everybody saying don't buy property, blah blah. The interest rates were about 6.5% at the time. The deposits were 30% what I had to put down, and everybody said don't buy now. And I remember I bought a property for I think it was 90 odd £1,000. The reality is the mortgage was a bit squeezed, and the cash flow wasn't as strong as it was. But as soon as we bounced back in 2012 and money got flooded into the market with the right to the help to buy schemes and all that stuff, and the market bounced back, my asset price shot up quickly. I managed, because I heard about the BRR back then as well, and I left nearly 40 grand in the deal, and I was like, how does this work? I'm never going to be able to save up 40 grand all the time. But then the asset price jumped up, and the reality is I still had the cash flow in between that time. I couldn't buy the house. If I'd have waited to 2012, I would have never been able to buy that house at the same price again. And I managed to refinance all my money out in 2012 and had a better cash flow because the rates had come down as well. So if the numbers work with the rates now, they probably will come down at one point, I believe. But going on some of the points what everybody said, I think environments dictate results. You've got to be in the right environment with the right people. Make sure you pick the right thing that is suited to you. Like everybody's echoing this. I'm really proud of putting this together. I know I mentioned it earlier on, but just do this exercise. Figure out how much money you've got. Figure what your knowledge and not just knowledge, experience is like. Figure out how much of a network you got. Like, have you got builders? Have you got accountants? Have you got tax advisors? Because the further you go up this pyramid here, the more you're going to need of all of these. Have you got the time to execute it? And more than anything, have you got the confidence? Like everybody has to skill up. You see this in football all the time. Like footballers go out to like the first, like into lower league clubs to get their skill up. Boxers go through journeyman to skill up to the bigger fights. They don't chuck them straight in the deep end with this stuff. And don't get me wrong, there was always exceptions. Mike Tyson was a champion at 19. Wayne Rooney scored in his debut at 16. When you do exercise like this and ask yourself the proper questions, you'll figure out if you're an exception or if you're the rule or if you're below the rule. And then play in your own game. Use social media to get inspiration, but not to measure yourself against other people. But once you figure this out, what you want to do and where you should be starting, what's relevant for you and your skill set as well, then find your tribe. Whether it's Leah, whether it's Steve, Ahmed, like join people's communities and be in the same environment and in that same direction. And that acronym, I think it is keep follow one course to successful. Like keep focused, like, and then skill up on that, and then go out. But if you keep on going to network events, keep on turning up to things, keep on watching social media, you'll just be. I heard that Sadhguru say this. If you've got a destination, like most people's destination is, I want financial and time freedom. That's usually the end goal for everybody with property. Whether you're passionate about it or whether you're not, the freedom and finance and time freedom it gives you is what everybody's going towards. But if you keep on changing your direction every 2 steps from SAs to social housing to HMOs, like that journey towards your end goal is going to be a very, very long journey. So yeah, that's what I'd say to people is find what works for you with your circumstances at the moment. Then just double down on it and stick with it until it works, and then skill up slowly and just find your environments in your tribe. Sorry.
All right. Yeah. Someone just asked you, Harvey, how many of those books have you really read? I know that you read a lot, no? You gave me a book. So
yeah, listen, I stopped reading though. I had a stage where I was hungry for knowledge. So I used to listen to a book a week on times 3 speed. I used to read this constantly. But then what I've done over the last year or so is joint masterminds, and I study one subject. It was brilliant, this, but what it's done is got me into it's good because I've got a base knowledge of information now, but it got me in trouble. Every time I read a new book, it was a new idea, and I kept on just jumping around. And because I've got an entrepreneurial mindset, I wasn't sticking with it. What I do now is I pay as much money as I'm scared to pay to join a mastermind, because when you pay, you massively pay attention, and I've got skin in the game. So now I've got to focus on that person's direction. Otherwise, I've lost my money and made myself feel foolish for that. So yeah, like, it is great reading a lot, but be careful not to read too much in too many different directions, because, as I said, you just keep on bouncing around. I stopped going network events. Every time you see a new speaker talking about, I'm like, even when Steve said, I'm concentrating on high cash flow, commercials, and I'm thinking, I just bought 3 buy-to-lets. So maybe I should. I'm like, no, like, you'll stay in my lane.
That's that shiny penny. That's the shiny penny you guys
yeah.
were talking about. It is probably one of the biggest things that I see with people that you coach and whatever else do. Come to you 1 month and they go, right, I'm going to do deal sourcing. They're like, I've seen this rent-to-rent thing, I'm going to have a go at that. Next month is social housing. And you can't actually emphasize that point that you're making enough. Follow one course until successful. I think it's Bruce Lee who said you're better off practicing one kick 10,000 times than 10,000 different kicks. And it's the same with the books, where you can have loads and loads. You're better off reading the same book so many times that you really grasp that concept and know what you're doing inside out, and just sticking to that. It's great because there's so much knowledge out there, but you also need to be able to, the skill nowadays is knowing what to cut out, and maybe it's for later, but maybe it's not for now, and just saying, right, this is what I'm doing right now, this is my focus, this is my plan, and this is what sticks. And I think we all have that. We're all entrepreneurial. We all see these great ideas. I do it with things. I'm like, social housing, no, it's not for me right now. And I know it's great, but you sort of make your decision and just stick to it and see it through, because they all work. All of these strategies work. They all work well. Once you got up and running with one, I think you can look at diversifying them. But yeah, that is, you've hit the nail on the head. It's probably one of the most common things you see, and we all do it as well. But the skill is fighting it and saying, actually, that sounds good, but I'm going to leave it for now.
Yeah, Steve Jobs said it, didn't he? He said once you start getting a bit of momentum as well, you get more opportunity. That's exactly what I've done. I got momentum with some deal sourcing, some BRR deals myself. Then I tried opening a lettings business and a building business at the same time. Two very complex businesses to run individually. And I thought I was already Richard Branson. I thought I'm going to have this group of companies, and my sourcing business wasn't sturdy. And I hired a few people now. Outsourced a few things, like everybody says, multiple streams of income, outsource it, hire people. And I'm not a micromanager. I was easily like, hey, here you go, get on with it, just don't bother me kind of thing. And I tried growing just too quick, you know. So you've got to really, really get that pace. Most things will work, but going back to that analogy, what you're saying, Steve, as well, Bruce Lee and all these people worked on the fundamentals. The fundamentals is finding deals. You've got to put repetition in. Repetition negates luck. You've just got to look at high volume of deals and do it repetitively. But if you're looking at HMOs 1 minute, SAs the next minute, social ads, and all these different things, you just won't get anywhere. This book's really good, by the way, even though I'm saying don't read too many. It's a paradox of choice. And in today's world, that's what's freezing more people than anything. But that's why I really agree with Ahmed, what he was saying earlier on. Weekend courses, I don't think work anymore. I think you need to join a community where you get support as you're going along, where you can get a feedback loop off of what you're actually doing. The learning comes when you're doing. So getting the base knowledge from a course is great, but you then got to implement it, and then you want somebody by your side that can guide you while you implement it, validating your choices, which is massive because you get frozen in choices sometimes, and giving you feedback on your choices to help you navigate the waters ahead kind of thing.
So it's the difference between information and implementation, isn't it? There's so much information out there, but you've got to implement. You've got to work with someone and make it relevant. I think I say this a lot when I sort of do training with people. You know that saying, knowledge is power, but it's not until you actually do something with it. And I think that's basically what Ahmed was saying as well. Like, knowledge only becomes powerful when it's actually applied. So actually get enough knowledge, and sometimes a healthy amount of ignorance is useful because that allows you to get stuck into things and figure it out on the way. Otherwise you do get that paralysis by analysis. To just get moving, there's enough support and resources available that once you're in something, you can find someone that's had the same challenges, had the same difficulties, and can show you how to work through them. But you've got to take the first step forward to see through the mist sometimes. Otherwise, you really can just sit and there might be people here. You've attended some webinars, you've been attending webinars for months and months and months. Rather than just gathering information now, just your next goal is the timeline and put a deadline and making a decision on what your strategy is and just sticking to it. That's probably the most useful at this point in the year. If you haven't already done that, it's possibly the most useful thing I think you can actually go and do.
Good. I just want to add one more thing, actually, just to add on to Steve and Harvey there. I think one of the biggest issues people have when they're starting out is that, we've all, if you think about it, we've all said different things. I've said, let's do buy to less, and, Steve said, let's do commercial, and someone else said, let's do deal packaging. And it'd be interesting to hear your opinions as well on this. But when I was starting out in property, and this is why I think courses alone is not the solution. When I was starting out in property, I would attend, webinars like this one, or I would go to events and I would say, well, actually, Steve said this, but Harvey said this. Well, one of them is right and one of them is wrong because they're saying two conflicting things. And what I've realized over the years is everything is contextual. So when I was doing a lot of my 1-bed into 2-bed conversion, they were ex-council properties, right? So essentially, I'm advocating to people, you should buy ex-council properties because they have great value and they rent really well and blah, blah, blah. But then at the same time, Steve could say, well, that actually ex-council is a terrible idea. But now, if you think about it, I am talking about ex-council properties in the middle of the London Bridge, 5 minutes from the Shard, in a very, very desirable location. Steve might be referring to an ex-council property in the middle of a huge estate in a really bad area, but the context is different. I'm talking about that strategy in the context of a really nice location. Steve might be talking about that strategy in the context of a really bad location. Now, that's not to say I'm right and he's wrong, or he's right and I'm wrong. It just depends on your context. So, maybe someone has tried commercial conversion in their area and it just doesn't work because everyone wants way too much money for it. And, you hear someone on YouTube and they might say, well, actually commercial is a terrible idea because it doesn't work. In that area, in that context with those builders, maybe it is a terrible idea, but maybe in Steve's context, in his area with his builders, maybe is the best idea. So I think the issue is that when you don't have the experience and you just have the surface level knowledge from a video or from a course, all of that context gets stripped. And in reality, that context is the most important thing, because everything is contextual. What's right for one person might not be right for another person. And by the way, I don't want to go too technical, but if someone's aim is to build a portfolio and buy and hold, and if you have two deals, one deal might have less profit, but let's say the stress testing passed and it works really well as a refinance. The other deal might have more profit, but maybe the stress testing doesn't work, and therefore it is not a good hold. So then it's like, well, which one's a good deal? Well, it depends, because one has less margin, but the stress test passes. The other one has more margin, but the stress test doesn't pass. So everything is contextual in terms of what can and can't work. And I think this is one big thing a lot of people have to try to work out a solution to, because I think people do risk that they might take a snippet from somewhere and take that at face value. That was my experience. I don't know if someone had a similar experience, but I just wanted to share that, because I do think that leads to a lot of lack of clarity there.
Thanks, Ahmed. Thanks, everyone. So we go to this question and answer session. I don't have a lot of time to the end of the webinar, but let's try. So the way it goes, so if you have a question, I know that some of you already wrote it on the chat. So just raise your hand, and then I will give you the permission to speak, but try to make it quick, just like 10 seconds, one question. And then for the panelists, please try to also provide this, quick questions, quick answers as much as you can. But before, I want to again just remind you about our promotion through this webinar for our premium plan. You can get it for 50% off. Go to the settings page, or Sarel, you can put the links again. Click on the link, then click add coupon, enter experts webinar, click apply, and you will get it for £49.5 only. There are many features. Technology can help you build your portfolio. So hurry up during this webinar time, you can get it. And also, one last thing, we have two experts in here that also on our panel of experts, Steve and Ahmed. So you can book calls. I will share again the links on the chat. You can see the prices for the calls here, but just click book a meeting, and you will see a discounted rate during this webinar time of 25% discount. So you have two benefits this webinar: promotion to our premium plan, and to get some calls with some of the experts. So let's start with Susanna. I will give you just a permission. Just unmute and feel free to ask your question.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you very much for this webinar. By the way, I found it really useful. If I may, I'm going to ask a property investment relating question, but nothing that was discussed today. I have been investing in property for a couple of years now, built a kind of medium-sized portfolio. I'm soon moving out of the UK, and I was hoping to keep investing. Would any one of you know if expats can, how is investment from if you live abroad and want to invest in the UK? Is that still possible, or is that the end of my property investing in the UK?
It's absolutely possible. Loads of people from outside the UK invest in the UK market. At this point in time, are you currently investing for a limited company or in your personal name?
I've got two limited companies.
Fine. Yeah, the limited company is its own entity, which is based here in the UK. So you could be shareholder, director, and be based elsewhere. So you're absolutely fine to keep investing in the UK. And I recommend you do. If you compare the UK market to many markets around the world, it's one of the most stable and one of the ones that has the most potential for growth moving forward, just down to those constraints with supply and demand. But yes, to answer your question in very short, yes, you absolutely can.
You can't imagine how happy you just made me. I thought we got like last half a year. I'm trying to panic buy. But yeah, that's good to know.
No, you're absolutely fine. I will say, if you're permanently going to be based abroad, you may need to watch out for slightly elevated stamp duty or taxation. So just keep an eye on that. And obviously, you'll be wherever you're moving to. Will be sorry if you mentioned it, I didn't catch it. But wherever you're moving to, you may obviously have different taxation there to consider.
Yeah.
But and the short answer is yes, you can do it. Yeah,
Thank you very much.
no problem.
Okay, thanks, Biluther. I hope I pronounce it well. Just unmute and
Hi, I was looking at the promotional app, and this is my first time, and I wanted to just quickly check whether the lenders on that app, is it a panel of lenders or it's whole of the market?
it's almost off market. Like we think that this panel includes all the mainstream lenders or the specialist buy-to-let lenders. We might miss very few, but it should be very comprehensive. And you can, the benefit of like Lendo basically two things. Like one, it's not just an aggregator that you can see the rates that are now available. It's actually the engines in the background stress test the data, the portfolio stresses the case. So, you know, like there is for each case on buy-to-let mortgages, the rental income is crucial. So the experts here mentioned the stress test. Okay, so because of that, there are, I mean, mentioned that the rate can be lower and the fees can be higher. So lenders reduce rates in order for some cases to pass the stress test or to get more funds. So Lendode is doing this work for you in a digital way. So you get more accurate results than just a regular aggregator over the internet. We have a live feed, and we also have the ability so you can submit the application online, and we have a team in the background that can also provide advice. Yeah.
Hey, is it integrated with lenders? In a sense, is it API based going to the lenders, or is it you have a backend team which basically analyze the?
There is no, like it's not connected. The API basically, yeah, we are connected to lenders to a main API, so we get all the live products and the updates. But in order to submit an application, especially in the buy-to-let market, you have to use a broker. So we have this solution as well in a digital way or in an offline way as well. Yeah, but it's mainly in terms of technology. You can see the products. You can play with the rental income to see if it passed the stress test or not, or which lenders will you meet the criteria and which lenders you don't.
Okay, so in terms of the lender's information, you have up-to-date information. What I'm looking for is that I have a spreadsheet that I created probably. I came to this application later, but before that, I kind of created my own spreadsheet, which kind of work. As the panel mentioned that, I'm probably little bit procrastinating. I have the fund. It's just a bit scared. And then also looking at I have a broker which is a panel of lenders, and the DLC gave probably 2 or 3 months ago. I wasn't really satisfied, and then I was educating myself, and then one of the things is look at whole of the market lenders. So that's why I'm asking the question.
It will give you a quite comprehensive, I think, sight of the market. But yeah, it's always good to do also your own research. Yeah, so we need to move on to the next question. So
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Paul, we'll give you the permission. Just unmute yourself, please.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Yeah, no, thank you for this seminar. Really, really good content. My question is, I'm considering doing a flip, and I'm going to use bridging finance for that. The flip should take 10 to 12 weeks for the actual renovation. And I just wondered how long you would recommend taking out a bridging loan to take into consideration not only the renovation, but also the sale at the end of the
I'm happy to answer it, but I don't want to.
Okay, go ahead.
Usually with bridging loans, they'll run between 3 to 12 months, and you've got flexibility on when you pay it back. In terms of how long to take it out for, you wouldn't ordinarily need to agree up front unless you've got a particular type of bridge, like it's a 6-month step or something that goes up in rate after that 6 months. I would just always take into account not just the refurb, but also putting it on the market. What was your exit? Did you say it's a flip?
It's a flip, yeah. So it'd be a sale at the end of the
Got it. Yeah. So then the key things usually obviously getting it back on the market and getting it sold. And so there might be a couple of months in that process as well, even just going through legals. We've all dealt with slow solicitors. That in terms of what to do to grease the wheels in that process, I would say make sure you've got good solicitors on board, aim to list the property ASAP. So the second you're just about done, have it all booked and ready to list. But usually with the bridges, you can exit them, in the month that you're ready to repay the lending. Does that help? Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. No, it's really useful. Thank you.
It's something still like for instance, in our bridging product, like you can repay the loan after 3 months with no penalties. So our recognition always like if you can take it for a longer term, of course it can impact the net release that you can but it's better to be on the safe side and take, you can use our deal analyzer to understand what the impact on the flip analyzer of the length of the project can basically how it can impact your profit in the end. And of course it will increase your bridging costs, but it's always better to be more cautious and take into account all the things that might happen. And
exactly. I understand the penalties are very severe, so better to take it out for longer than you need.
Bridging is a great tool, but you need to be careful because with bridging, it's a short-term loan, so you need a very good plan, and you need to know how you exit the loan, and you need to make sure that you have the right people around you to get you out. Because then it can become more expensive.
I will add one little thing to that because it might be the difference that makes the difference. One of the things that I've seen people trip up on the flip is they find a deal below market value, they add great value, it's worth a load of money at the end, but they're in a market that's not moving quickly for that type of property. So just make sure there's a demand for the type of property that you're flipping, and that it will sell. And like touching what Avram said, that you've got the exit clear at the end of it, because that's when you can come unstuck. Short-term lending can run into high costs quite quickly. But if you have a look and just a bit of research on Rightmove, use tools like Property Log, how long of that type of property sitting on the market at that price you're looking to sell at, and then provided you're happy that it's moving quick enough, then go for it.
By the way, would you agree with me, the panelists, like in the exit strategy of refinance versus sell, if it's a BRR or flip or buy to sell, basically from our experience, like it looks like it takes much more time to sell. Of course, it depends on the property type, the area, but refinance usually is a better way of exit. What is your thoughts about it?
Yeah, I think in terms of the timeline, I would say generally refinance is probably quicker. But in terms of a better exit, well, the benefit of refinance is you get a lot of the money tax-free and you can use that money again. I suppose the benefit of the flip is that money can snowball much, much faster. So if you make £50,000 profit, well, then you get the initial capital plus 50. And then if you do that again, then it's another 50, another 50. So I think it's hard to say which one's better or worse. But in terms of from a risk point of view, I would say refinance is significantly less risky compared to a flip, because, well, you're not reliant on a sale at the end. You're reliant on a revaluation. And as long as you've done your comparables correctly, you should be okay. So I say to people that, even if you want to flip properties, you should do your numbers and have a plan B, which is refinance. And maybe you refinance for 6 months. Well, when I say 6 months, I mean, you'll have to look at the mortgages if it's variable, 2-year fixed, 5-year fixed. But, let's say you get into the market and you want to sell, right? You should do the numbers and make sure it works on the refinance. So in case you have to hold for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, well, at least you're not, going to get burnt in the process. Whereas if you buy something and you're trying to flip, and let's say the refinance doesn't work because a particular type of property, the stress testing, whatever, well, then you have no plan B. You have to sell that property, and you'll have to keep dropping the price more and more and more. So that's my take on that.
Okay, good advice. Thank you, everyone.
I agree with that. But the other thing to be aware of in these sorts of markets, obviously Labour being in power at the moment makes it pretty turbulent. So depending on budgets, markets can really shift in these sort of times when we've been struggling on inflation and stuff like that. So definitely do what Ahmed was just saying there, is have a plan B, because it just one budget shift could like spike the interest rates a little bit, or something could happen and really slow the market down. And if you've got a slow market, or solicitors are being slow, like Steve was saying, all these variables are there. So definitely have that plan B in place in uncertain times like this.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks. Thank you very much, Paul. Adu, are you still with us? If so, just unmute. Yeah. Adu?
Just so you know, we can't hear you, Andrew. I'm not sure if you're speaking.
Yeah, I think that it looks like there is a problem. So let's go to Daniel Hollister.
This is Paul. I think I might still be able to speak. I think you may have to unmute me and allow audio for other people.
Let me try. Okay, 1 second.
We do property, not technology, you see.
You know, it's my occupation, but yeah,
I've never had a Zoom call where someone's not been talking on mute. It's just the thing, isn't it? It's normally me.
Okay, so let's go to the next one. Sadia. Let's try. You can unmute. Okay, so perhaps we have
Hi.
Okay. All
Can you
right.
hear me?
Yes, Sadia. Yeah. All right.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. It's very informative for me. It's my first time. I just have a question, or anyone can help me about the property I'm purchasing at the moment. I am buying from right to buy from the council, and the property have a potential for there's a planning permission comes with. So I'm thinking to borrow a short term and then refinance later. But I have no knowledge if there's a risk behind. So I would be grateful if you can help me.
Who wants to take it?
Advice, yes. Is it worth it to borrow short term?
I think I don't know if did you guys get that? I think, can you just
No, I
repeat?
didn't fully understand the question. Yeah, me neither.
Sorry, did you say you're looking at a property with planning, being sold with planning permission?
No, I'm purchasing. I'm buying from right to buy from the council a flat, but there's a planning permission comes with. That's the opportunity I am looking forward to, so I can extend the extra 2 bedrooms. And I am thinking to borrow short term, like bridge loan or someone to invest. And then when I finish the property, to convert for three bedroom to mortgage or refinance, and then pay back the short term loan. Is it worth take that risk?
Sorry, I think my understanding of this is, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, you're buying this property from the council at a discount, right?
Yes, I have maximum discount. Yes.
Yeah, because you were a council tenant previously, or still are?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. My understanding is if you're buying that property, then you have to buy that property to live in yourself, and there might even be a time period, there might be a lease restriction on for 5 years and maybe 10 years. I bought a property once which had a 10-year restriction on there. It's anywhere from 5 to 10 years. So you will have to buy that property for yourself, in your name, and you will have to abide by that restriction. So bridging finance is going to be difficult because that's more so for development as opposed to for residential. So my understanding is you will have to buy this as a residential for the time being. you can then use, you can maybe have investors or have something on board in terms of doing that, extension and everything else. But you will then have to wait 5 years in order to sell it and repay any investors and, make it work that way. But as far as I understand it, I don't think you can get bridging finance straight away because, well, it should be for you to live in as opposed to for you to develop and sell out.
Yes, you're right, but I'm not selling. What I'm thinking is I am not expert. You guys are the experts, so I would be. I'm asked. That's what I'm asking. What I wanted is to after I develop the property into 2-3 bedroom potentially, then that is to mortgage. But before that, to borrow short term, because if I mortgage now, I have to wait for 2 years and then remortgage again. But there's a discount, nearly 100K, plus the development, the price will increase. Then take out that and then start my own property to Philippines. That was the idea, but my intention is not to sell, but to mortgage 12 months later and take out the discount.
Yeah, I think that I understand where you're coming from. Avram might be able to answer this better, but I'm not sure as a residential purchase you'll be able to get bridging. So, and also if you bought that, you'd be.
Yeah. No, it's like there is a bridging that we do. It's like non-regulated bridging, which you can lend only on buy to let. But there are lenders like I think Quest One, others that will do also regulated bridging. But
I think it's complex. Yeah, as soon as it's your personal home, it falls under FCA regs, doesn't it? But it more to the point, I think going back to what Ahmed said, usually with the right to buy. By the way, well done, because I think they've just withdrawn that, and that's probably one of the last opportunities to get a major discount on property. I've been looking for a coupon code for Rightmove for a while, but I haven't found one. But in terms of borrowing the money, adding the value, I think that part's fine. I think in terms of refinancing, but you might need to check this in your paperwork, or maybe get a solicitor to run through your paperwork. I believe if you start releasing value within that 5 years or refinancing, there may be some repayment of the discount due. So I think you might need to wait for that first initial window to elapse before you can even though I appreciate you're still keeping the home, before you can start releasing value or equity from it. So, but double check that. But that's my understanding of it.
Yeah, that was mine as well. It's exactly where I was getting to. Like the only way you'd be able to do it is you bought it cash. But again, yeah, they probably would have a restriction around that. They do generally let you use a discount as deposit, some lenders, but borrowing additionally above that. And again, even if you could, you'd have to make sure you've got the right sort of multiplier of your income as well, because it's going to be based on your income, not as an asset. So yeah, definitely check that out.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's really helpful. I did check for mortgage, and there's some banks using that the discount as a deposit, and also my income is not bad. But I also was told someone who done like flipping, but within the mortgage, I was told I have to wait 2 years, fix it mortgage to remortgage again the property. But it's just me, little bit hurry. If I can get out of something, why do I have to wait for 2 years? But I know the restrictions are 5 years. I've done all the work with the council, and I cannot sell before 5 years, and I cannot even rent as well. So yeah, but thank you so much for your advice. And
thanks, yeah. I want to wrap up, but Anu, just if that's okay with you, we have like one last question from Andrew. Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, good. My question is, I have quite a few properties in the northwest, and every time I go to remortgage, the mortgage companies always look for payslips, and yeah, mainly payslips. Now I've just been made redundant, and it's kind of like, how do I go and refinance some of my properties when now I don't have pay, or I won't have payslips?
So it's just, are they in your personal name or in a limited company? These properties?
Limited company. Nearly all of them are in limited company.
And do you have retained profits in the company?
Over the last probably 10 years, I set up one company in 2014, and over the last 10 years, I haven't really been showing a profit as such because I've always kind of reinvested. I've bought properties that needed a bit of work doing to them, and then I've reinvested the money to get these properties up and running. I think probably this year I probably will be able to show a profit. Yeah, because now a lot of my properties now are up to quite a good standard, a reasonably good standard. Like last year, I spent nearly £50,000 refurbishing properties. Mostly of my properties are buy to lets, mainstream buy to lets. I have got 2 or 3 houses that have been converted into 3 flats. That's 3 houses that have been converted into 3 flats. So there is kind of the multi-unit aspect of those. I have flats, I have single vanilla buy-to-lets, and then I have multi-unit buy-to-lets.
There are lenders that will lend in the absence of being able to demonstrate personal income, but it naturally will influence your rates that you get. It might be one for Avaram, to be fair, but there are definite. I'm 100% certain that there are, because I've got people in similar situations who've got equity, want to get mortgages, and they don't have, maybe they've been made redundant or whatever it may be, but they're in between having an income on paper. So I'm 100% confident you can do it. It may affect your rate slightly, but and provided obviously the affordability is there within your portfolio, the rents are enough. But
there are special lenders that will do it. I just shared the link tree of Landlord, so you can schedule a call with our mortgage team. They can definitely advise on and perhaps find you something. So okay, guys, I think it's coming a bit late, so I would continue, and I think that it's great to have you all here and great answers for the question. I believe there are many more, so perhaps we'll do another webinar. So I want first to thank you. Before that, we will keep this webinar up and running the next 2 hours. If you want to get your 50% off on our premium, also if you want to schedule calls with Ahmed and Steve, I share the links. Experts, feel free on the chat if you have links that you want to share for your social media or anything else, so people, if they want to reach out. Let me just show you again how you upgrade. Go to the settings page, click upgrade, click add coupon, experts, webinar, and click apply. And you get the 50% discount for the first year. So thanks everyone. If you want to say like last words, I don't know, Harvey, Leah, Gil, Ahmed, Steve, feel free. And we can, end it for today.
Thanks everyone. It's been really great being part of the webinar. So I've also learned a lot from listening to everybody else. So thanks so much for inviting me on, and yay, landlord. I've got to go. I've really got to go now.
Oh, thanks.
All right, guys. Catch you in a bit. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Simran, thank you for having me. And I put some links in the chat in terms of where to get in touch and where to download some of my resources and get in touch with me if anyone needs to do that. But yeah, thank you once again for having me. Great to meet a lot of people online. Some people I've sort of seen before, some people I haven't met before. So yeah, great to touch base there. But yeah, thanks again for having me. I look forward to the next one.
Thanks, Ahmed. Gil?
I want to do a shameless plug. So if anybody's interested in learning how to analyze our property deals, go onto any of my Instagram reels, comment the word BRR. That will trigger an automation and you'll get 10 free training videos to learn how to analyze a deal. Because if you buy a deal from me, somebody else, whoever, you want to know yourself if a deal's good.
Thanks, Gil. Yeah, go to Gil's channel. It's great channel, great content there. Also Steve's channels and Harvey, of course. Yeah. Steve, last words.
I think just a recap on a few of the key points for me that have come up here, which were getting the knowledge, fine, but taking action in terms of backing that up, and choose your strategy, decide on what you're going to do and stick with it. And I like to leave or wrap things up with a bit of a quote. One of my favorite quotes is Les Brown, who says most people fail in life not because they aim too high and they miss, but because they aim too low and they hit. What you see is plenty of example of different people from all different places in the country and the UK, from all different backgrounds, who have gone and built their self in their own way in property. So go and work out what you want to do, not what you think you can achieve, but what you truly want to achieve, and then find the resources, find the people, and get after it.
Great tip. Thanks, Steve. Harvey?
Yeah, just thank you. Echo everything what everybody said tonight. Been great. Thank you, everyone, for inviting me on. And yeah, look, just go after it this year. I think just the results are in the doing, not in the just the thinking about it. So yeah, definitely go after it.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And thanks, everyone. We'll see you in the next webinar. I'm keeping this session on. I will just turn off my video and audio. So if you want to use the promotion code, you have it on the chat. 50% of our premium plan for the first year. Very valuable. Many features you can find there, and some benefits. Only 49.5 if you upgrade to this webinar time. I will put it again on the chat, and thank you very much. Great evening, and feel free to contact us and reach out if you need any help using the platform, using our chat box on the right side of the platform. Thank you very much, guys, and good evening.